Hi, thank you for joining us for Exploring Cultural Competency. My name is Phoebe James and I'm a Professional Development Officer with the Primary Health Network. Before we go any further, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are all meeting on today and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. Just wanted to mention before we start that this session is being recorded. The recording and the PDF slides will become available on our PHN website in the Education Library in the next few days. We are also having a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, so please feel free to put your questions in the box and we'll endeavour to get to all of them. There is also an evaluation. There's a few things. So I have one that would be sent to you through GoToWebinar. And Josh also has one that will be on a QR code at the end of his presentation, but we'll talk more about that. So today presenting, we have Josh Fuller, who is a Community Engagement Officer at the Primary Health Network. And I will now hand over to him. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Phoebe. Yama, everyone. As Phoebe said, my name is Josh Fuller. I am the First Nations Community Engagement Officer for the Primary Health Network across the Hunter, New England, Central Coast and Mid-Coast areas. I've been with the company now for 18 months, maybe 2 years, and I'm going to be delivering this information session for PHN service providers today. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the lands on which we are today, which we live, work and play, and respect the contribution our ancestors have made across our vast region and across our country. Yeah, Yama means hello in Gomeroi and Wiradjuri. So a bit about myself. I'm a Wiradjuri man from Dubbo, New South Wales. I belong to the Tabaga people. My ancestors were one of the last people to come off the Tabaga mission out there. I've worked in and around different community services and different programs across my career over the last 15 years and have worked in communities across the state in every aspect of community services except for aged care is one area that I haven't worked. But yeah, I have a different experience in different roles, different communities, different problems. I also have a trade background before working with community. So straight out of school, I went and done a few trades and then started as a youth worker and thought that, you know, I'd give it a go working with kids, see how that'd go. I thought that maybe this would be a bit boring working in the office, but I loved it. I love working with mob, love being in the community. I loved just that interaction and looking after each other. And yeah, went from there, worked in out of home care as a case manager for about 5 years, sustainable tenancies, young Aboriginal parents programs, mental health, disabilities, worked across yeah, vast range of different community services. So now I'm with the PHN. My role within the PHN is a community engagement officer. So what my role is in the community is to find out what is missing in our healthcare systems, in our primary healthcare systems, and trying to find organisations and funding to be able to fill them gaps, to be able to find gaps in that system and trying to help mob in our communities and trying to find mob to deliver them programs for our communities. Today we're going to talk about who we are. So one, we've done the acknowledgement. Two, the artwork I'll talk a bit about shortly. Three, we're going to talk about who we are, what we can do to help. So this webinar has come about because of the need for what we do in general practice. So what the health access team does and what I do across the allied health sector is work with practices and community to educate them on a few different things. One would be cultural awareness, two would be the ITC program, the Closing the Gap initiative, and cultural safety. So, and also why asking the question is so important, what resources we have, and the referral form is obsolete, obviously, because that's a general practice thing that I should have taken out of the presentation. But yeah, so the acknowledgement of the country. So the two flags we have here, sorry, I've lost. What have I done here? I need to move that out of the way, sorry. There we go. I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians and lands on which we work and meet today, and pay our respects to elders past, present and future. The HNECCPHN are committed to honouring the Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's spiritual relationships to the lands, waters and seas. So what the acknowledgement is about is acknowledging Aboriginal people, Torres Strait Islander people. A lot of the time, a lot of policies have been written over the years that have not included us in decisions, have not included us in our own footprint, our own path that we want for ourselves and our people. So the acknowledgement that we do is about acknowledging that this is Aboriginal land, that this is unceded and sovereignty was never ceded. So if people want to know what the acknowledgement about, that's basically it, but there's a lot more and it can go a lot deeper into that, but we haven't got a couple of hours. So that's just the top of it. So a lot of this stuff I'm talking about today is just going to be just a rundown, just a quick what we do, how we do it within the PHN. When we come out for information sessions, we go deeper and we go into the what's and the hows and the where's and the whys. We're not experts in any way, but we are Aboriginal people when we do live and breathe who we are every day. So we're always learning about our culture every day. So it's not one person knows everything about everything. We're all on a learning path. If you don't learn something new every day, then you're not living. So on the left we have, it's on my left, I don't know if it's on yours, but we have the Aboriginal flag. So the Aboriginal flag is the black, yellow and red. The three colours represent the black for the people, the yellow for the sun and the red for the earth. Also the Torres Strait Islander flag on the right represents the Torres Strait Islander people. So we are two distinctive different cultures, but we're still the same. We're both First Nations people of this land and we are very similar. We're same but different. So the Torres Strait Islander flag represents the green, the land on which we're from, the black for the people, the blue for the sea, and the white represents peace. The star in the middle represents the stars in the sky and how the Torres Strait Islander people would navigate between their islands and get around in the sea. And the dari is a headdress that they wear when they dance and represents their culture. Just before, we just go back to that flag too. So a lot of the time, we see these flags and I see them put in different ways. So the correct way for a Torres Strait Islander and Aboriginal flag and Australian flag to fly is the Aboriginal flags on the left, Australian flags in the middle, and the Torres Strait Islanders on the right. We do that because we go in alphabetical order. So you go left to right, Aboriginal, Australian, Torres Strait Islander, so it goes left to right. So if you're just displaying this in your lobby or wherever you are, make sure that's the way they sit. So learning outcomes today, we want to have a better understanding of our First Nations health team from the PHN and how we can support your service, commission service, not allied health services that it says there. But we want to have a better understanding of Aboriginal history and culture for each region. We want better understanding of health priorities and needs of local communities. We want to know how to access culturally appropriate resources and better understanding of local First Nations health programs and services. So our first Nations Health Access team is this. Christy Vassal is our Health Access Manager, First Nations Health Access Manager. There's me, Josh Fuller, Hunter New England Central Coast First Nations Community Engagement Officer. And then we have Robbie Watson, who covers the Hunter and the Central Coast at the moment, as our First Nations Health Access Officer. And then we have Malika Riley and Ashley Bullock, who are our First Nations Health Access Officers in the New England area. So the artwork, so this is the artwork the PHN has commissioned, and this is from Dennis Golding. He's a proud Gamilaroi man, and he is currently working out of Sydney. So this logo represents the Aboriginal Health logo and cultural artwork has been produced for the Primary Health Network as a representation of the work, programs and services provided for First Nations communities within the Hunter New England Central Coast regions. The artwork represents traditional and contemporary practices of health, medicine and gathering between communities to share knowledge, experience and stories for providing better health outcomes. The branding provides an extensive visualization and natural resources and materials that identify the cultural and modern practices of the life and health sustainability. This includes waters, plants, flowers, and boomerangs. So, yeah, it's a beautiful piece of artwork. We have rolled this out across our region. You might be seeing it on some TV shirts and some branding that the PHN have out now, and it's beautiful. I love it. So yeah, what we can provide and what we do helps. These are some of the things that we do help general practice with, and like I said before, we want to help our commission services with also. So the dashboard stuff is more your GP stuff, but more your cultural safety. So each of these sessions have resources and different things that go along with that. So basically someone from our team or a couple of us from the team can come out and have a chat, have a look around and see what's happening, and have a look at, community health promotion opportunities to support Aboriginal communities and better health outcomes. Have a look at the 715 assessments and referral opportunities. I'm not sure where and what space you're working. We'll have to have a chat about that. But yeah, we're looking at linking providers to Aboriginal Health Services and the Community Services Directory. So we have a Community Services Directory that has a whole yellow pages basically of community services in your area, in each area. So if you're, just say you work in mental health, but somebody has housing issues, you just look at that directory and say, okay, this is where the referral's got to go for this, and this is where this goes for that. So it's really simple to use, and it's a directory of all the services. So these are the education sessions available for, I thought I changed that, for your services. So cultural safety. So what cultural safety is about is about understanding common barriers for First Nations people, accessing mainstream healthcare, the health risk factors and how to address these, asking the question, understanding the importance of identifying your Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander patients, their ethnicity and how to ask the question appropriately. The allied health referral shouldn't be there, and the ITC program is to develop and increase understanding of the ITC program and how it's related to allied health. So the ITC clients can have support with, so this is mainly for what we talk to general practice about, and for you guys out there that aren't who are commission service that aren't ITC programs. The ITC program is integrated team care, and it's about care coordination to work with clients to cooperate their appointments and then meet their health goals, transport and medical appointments assistance with gap payments for private and specialist allied health providers, medical aid, purchase and support. Aboriginal outreach workers can help clients with their appointments, help understand what the clinician or health worker is saying, and put them in touch with culturally appropriate health and community services. So these are our ITC providers in our footprint. We have Hunter Primary Care in Newcastle, Yarran on the Central Coast in Wyong, Biripi in Taree, Healthwise in Tamworth, Tob Wabba in Foster, Ungaroo in Singleton. So a lot of times I find a lot of times working with mob, the engagement is the main factor. Is a lot of the time it's why clients aren't engaging with a service, or why we can't get this client to come and see us, or we can't do this, we can't do that. So a lot of it goes to our history in a way, and the way we were brought up in having distrust towards non-Indigenous peoples and services, experiencing racism, judgment, identity issues, so not willing or afraid to identify. So a lot of our mob were brought up to not talk about being Aboriginal, not to say that they identify as being Aboriginal. A lot of our families took different identities growing up because of the stolen generation and that impact that it had. That is a big impact and intergenerational trauma because of that identity issue. There used to be an old lady that lived across the road from my grandmother back home, and Nan would send me over there all the time, and she'd say, son, go over and ask go and ask Auntie Dot for some sugar or tea. And I'd go over and ask her for a couple of tea bags or whatever it was that Nan wanted. And she'd come to the door and she'd wear the whole Indian dress. So I always thought she was Indian. I said, Nan, how come, why do you know that old Indian lady over there? And how come she doesn't talk, like, how come she doesn't have an accent? And Nan said, she's not Indian, son. She pretends to be Indian because she's worried about the welfare coming to get her kids. So that went on for well into the 90s. So this was like into the 90s, into the 2000s. So she had a lot of grandkids there living as well. And then they grew up thinking that they were Aboriginal, that they were Indian, not Aboriginal. So that created more identity crisis there. A lot of families took on different ethnicities because of the stolen generation and them worried about the welfare coming to take the kids. You know, Italian or Lebanese, they would change their identity so they could keep their kids, which is again, that identity and that intergenerational trauma, identity issues, and everything else that associates with that. Then comes, you know, the high rates of depression, anxiety, PTSD, suicide, and chronic conditions that we have amongst our mob, amongst Aboriginal people. We have a low health literacy, and that's where we need to be working with mob about that. Like, I work in the healthcare system now, and it's very hard to navigate from A to B to C because how complex it is and what clinically people are saying to you. Like, you have to have that a little bit of health literacy to understand that. We're overrepresented in the criminal justice system, unaware of health services in mainstream or primary care. We have poor access to private specialists and allied health, and we have that fear shame talking about health to non-Indigenous people. I think our Aboriginal outreach workers and our Aboriginal health workers are worth their weight in gold in working with mob in our communities to be able to express what is happening for them, to have that health literacy, to be able to explain that to them, and also to explain to the clinical people that they work with or the services that they work with on what is actually happening. Because you know, 9 times out of 10, when I was working with mob, it was always, what's going on? And they'd spill their guts and they'd tell me, oh, well, this and that, this and that. And then we get to the doctors or we get to wherever we're going and say, what's happening? Oh, no, nothing, not much. So, well, you didn't tell me that in the car. You got to tell them what's happening, you know, because of that, that trauma or the background that they have. It sort of depends individually on each client and, you know, how that works. So closing the gap and how it started, as we know, it started back in 2008. It came from the apology from K. Rudd. So on the 13th of February 2008, newly elected Prime Minister Kevin Rudd made a formal apology to Australia's First Nations people, particularly in the stolen generations whose lives had been blighted by the past government policies and the forced child removal of Indigenous assimilation. It was witnessed by thousands of people and gathered in Canberra for the event and was broadcast all over the country. It was a powerful and memorable moment in the nation's history. The apology cleared the air, inspiring Australians to believe we really can build the kind of respectful relationship needed for positive long-term outcomes. So by 2001, all state and territory governments had issued apologies. Only the Australian government at the federal level under John Howard had objected. So this was a big step forward in Aboriginal history, just to acknowledge what had happened because of the past trauma and you know, the big hole it left amongst a lot of our families and amongst our culture because of that disconnection, people not knowing where they're from, not knowing who their mob were, not having anything to do with their culture, played a big part in a lot of the problems our families have today and a lot of the problems that our families still face. And this was a big step forward in that. So that's why we have these closing the gap targets. This is why we have targets in working with Aboriginal people, because as we know, the gap's getting bigger. We want to get it. We want to start closing it. And what we have been doing hasn't been working. So we need to, as we have, set new targets to be able to do that. And some of these things are, you know, cultural safety and support. So what is cultural safety? What does it look like? What help can we give? What resources can we help with? Help with making your space culturally safe for First Nations people. So cultural safety is about shared respect, shared meaning, and shared knowledge. So we're here to help. That's what we do. We're here to come and have a yarn, have a look at your premises, your clients, or whatever's needed to understand what's happening with mob in our communities and try and work together to, you know, make a place safe for mob to turn up and have that feeling of safety, because a lot of the time we don't want to go up the road because we've heard bad things about this service, or we've heard bad things about that service because of what auntie or uncle said or what cousin said or whatever's happening in community. So a lot of it's a lot of community members talk with one another, and a lot of it's you know, once you get a bad name, it's hard to sort of bring yourself back from that. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to help in any way we can. So some cultural safety resources we have here, and each education session comes with its own resources, and we will supply them as we go. Oh, that's what I just said there. Yeah. Each session will contain resources on each subject matter. It help with your practice or with your service to better engage and support and welcome First Nations people, how to better communicate and support patients, and what services are available in your community. So it could be more of a collaborative approach. We could come out and say, you know, they're working with da-da-da-da-da, but they need this as well. So this is another thing that happens within Aboriginal communities, is we don't understand how we can have all these different services, but they're only taking care of one thing, whereas everything for us is connected. So we, in our culture, everything is connected. So it's a holistic approach, but in health, everything sits in different spaces. So we need to have more collaborative approach when we're working with Aboriginal people and working at different problems. So if we're talking health, you know, housing might be an issue, and financial strain might be an issue, and there might be domestic violence might be an issue. So we need to get all them services together to work together in one goal to look after that client. We need a more collaborative approach when we're working with mob, because that's how we work. We have an old saying, the old people have an old saying, it's nibbichi nibbichi, which means that everybody's got to give. So if everybody gives, then everybody receives. So that includes knowledge too. So a lot of our mob aren't aware these services exist, but they're only working with that one service, but they have 3 or 4 different other issues, but they don't want to talk about that because they're unaware that these services can work together, or they're unaware that they exist. So that's how we need to look at how we deliver that service and how we help mob do that. So again, these are some of the resources that we can provide: significant dates, closing the gap, cultural ideas and examples of culturally safe environments, and don't be shy to identify. And obviously, does your family have a doctor? Relates to GPs. These are our community services directories also. You can find these directories when we come out and have a chat. It says it's also on our PHN website. After today's session, using the information provided on the attendance sheet, you'll receive an email to complete a survey. If you could please take the time to answer a few questions so we can improve the way we deliver and provide training sessions to primary health sector, not allied health, sorry. Yeah, friendly reminder, please make sure you have filled in the attendance forms, as we'll need this information to do the survey, the resource today. And that's it. Gonna go and see if we have some time for a little Q&A.
Thank you so much, Josh. We don't have any questions that have come through yet. So we can sit here and wait patiently, and maybe someone's typing very quickly to get them through. But I just wanted to say, for me personally, what an absolutely fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
Really, really well thought out, really well delivered, and good usable knowledge. So thank you so much.
No worries, thank you.
Look, and no questions have come through, so I guess it's just going to, yeah.
Sorry, do we have the questions from the survey that was filled out? Could you read a couple of them out and I can answer them as we're waiting, if anybody else wants to ask any questions?
Give me 1 second, I can pull that up.
I've only got one screen, so I can't pull it up.
No, that's fine.
How should we appropriately ask, do you identify? Is that a question just come through?
It is. Yep. It's come through from Rebecca.
Yep. So I think that's just, do you identify? Do you identify as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander? Is the question that you need to ask. A lot of mob are scared to answer that question. Then you can say, do you identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander? You can advise if you don't want to answer that question, but they might ask you why, and you just need to let them understand it's just data. We need to gather data to find out what our percentage of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clients is, and that's why we ask the question. You can answer it, or you don't have to. It's up to you. I think that's the best way to answer it, and you're being honest that way. And yeah.
So one of the questions we did ask on registration was, do you routinely ask all clients the Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander ethnicity question? So that does feed into this. So it's just, yeah, I think it's important to be able to like capture that information, as long as you're doing it in a respectful manner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you just let them know, look, this is all de-identified data. It's not going to go anywhere, but it's what it is we want to know where our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander population is and what services they are utilising.
So someone, like out of this session, someone wanted to get a better understanding relating to practicing in a culturally safe way.
Yeah, so
what does that
again,
look like from a practical day-to-day in the practice being culturally safe?
Yeah, I think that depends. Like, it's every service is different, and we'll have to come out and have a chat and just have a cuppa and have a yarn to have a look what your space looks like, have a look what your clientele area is. So, like, because we are a big region, we do cover here all the way out to, the New England. Moree is going to be completely different to Newcastle, so it depends where your service is and your community, and that all starts with an email or a yarn, and yeah, go from there.
Okay, and if a practice wanted to have you come out and go through their practice personally and see what that looks like and how you can help and any suggestions, what's the best way to do that? Is that email?
Yeah, just shoot us an email. I didn't put my details up at the end, did I?
No, I don't think so.
No, I didn't. You'll send that out with the survey, yeah? You can send that out with the survey.
Most definitely.
Yep.
I think that's basically it. We haven't had any more questions come through.
Yep.
Yeah. So once again, thank you for all of the attendees for this lunch and learn. It's been really well attended, which is always nice to see, because a lot of work does go in behind the scenes to make these things happen. Again, a huge thank you to Josh. Absolutely stellar presentation. I've learned a lot today. Super impressed. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Phoebe. Thanks everybody for letting me torment this in your lunch break.
Josh, just before we all run away laughing, and we did have Sean O'Connor come through. How do we build trust to increase attendance rates?
So again, that goes back to time. Like, you're talking with mob that have a distrust for services. They might have distrust for services that for different reasons, but sometimes things take time. Building trust is not something that's given, something that's earned. When you're dealing with mob, you need to take your time. You need to get to know them. They need to get to know you. You can't just walk in and expect them to spill their guts after an hour. It could take days, it could take months to build that relationship. It's something that's earned, it's not given, and it's just going to take time.
Sure.
More you show up, the more you show up and the more genuine you are, the better results you're going to get.
Perfect. All right, well, thank you so much again to everyone, again to Josh, and have safe holidays and look after each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Yalu.